What's up guys, and welcome back to the Bonsai-En YouTube channel. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing a follow-up and some work on the swamp cypress or bald cypress, depending on where you live, so stick around. Alright, so as I mentioned in the intro, this is my swamp cypress. Overseas, you guys might refer to these as the bald cypress, but nonetheless, we call them swamp cypress here in Australia. Now, this tree has been on the YouTube channel before, so the last time you guys would have seen this tree, we were actually potting it up into this bonsai pot. We were taking it from development into refinement, so you guys got to see that process. We chose the planting angle, so the front of this tree. We did some work on these roots down the bottom here, but at the time that it was on the YouTube channel, it didn't have any branching. So essentially it was just the trunk and the new leader that we had wired up, and that was all. So now we're going to go through and just see how the tree's done over the last almost 2 years. So August this year, it'll have been 2 years since we did that video. So, you know, we're creeping up on that 2-year period. The tree has done really well in the subsequent growing seasons. So as you can see on the tree, there's a lot more branching now than what was on the tree when we did the other video. But a quick history of this tree, I bought it as nursery stock, obviously, and grew it on. So around the back here, we actually have a wound that we're going to need to do some work on, so it needs healing. But this was where the actual trunk of the tree was, so it continued. That's how we fattened the trunk of the tree up. So one of the first things that was done on this tree is we actually cut that off, and then we grew from a new leader. So this was essentially a new shoot that was coming out the side where that original trunk was. And then we've grown that all the way up to the top here, obviously wired it while it was young and pliable to put some movement in it. Now it is a different style to have a lot of movement in a swamp cypress like this, or in a bald cypress. So I know a lot of the people do like the flat top style, or they'll do just like an informal upright style with all the branches coming down with that snow load effect on them. And that's really effective with this species of tree. So it is a style that you will see a lot for these trees, but for my one, I wanted to do a little more of a less traditional style when it came to the swamp cypress, and do more of an informal upright tree with that Japanese style aesthetic, which you can obviously see in this tree here. But after I grew the main leader on and put some wire and movement in it, at that time I was really just keeping the branches cut back because I didn't want any to really grow yet. But after that, the next thing I did was our first branch here. So usually our first branch on the tree is our thickest branch. So we need to let that branch grow out first and let it grow the largest. So for you guys that have been following me for a while, you probably would have seen a short that I did while this was still in development. And this first branch, I actually had it super long. It was like taking up a whole bench. That's how long it was. It would have been actually bigger than this tree, the branch. So what I was doing there was just fattening up the branch, okay, getting it thick. So the first branch on the tree was going to be the thickest, so that we have that correct branch taper going up the tree. So thickest branch at the bottom, thinnest branches at the top. So once that was cut off under here, once that was cut back, then the next line of work after that was what you guys seen on the YouTube channel, was putting it into this pot. And after that, we did some recovery on it over the next year, then started growing our branches in all the spots that we wanted. So basically on the outside of curves, the only branch on here that's, it's kind of on the outside of the curve, but this one at the front here, I really needed something to fill out this gap, so I brought a branch in from over this side. But basically, you know, we've got a branch here, then a branch on the outside of a curve back here, and then as we go up the tree, on the outsides of all the curves, we've got all our branches. So all the branches on this tree are actually traditionally in the perfect spots for where they're supposed to be. Now these branches just here, actually, so I've got this negative space that I left in the pot here, which we did discuss in the previous video. So you can see that the tree's planted more to one side. So these branches out here I'm letting grow so that we can fill out this negative space. So in the next season I will wire these up because they're a bit straight at the moment. But the other thing that I'm letting happen too is where we've let this branch thicken up on the tree just here, this one, where we're coming onto our secondary branch here, we're going to need to let this grow out now so that this can thicken probably to around 70% of the thickness of the first branch. That way we get a nice taper. So we're not going from really thick to really thin, we're going, you know, from really thick to kind of less thick, and then so on and so forth, if that makes sense. So once again, we'll need to let these grow out until this thickens up, then we can cut back again and continue doing our work on this lower branch down here. So a little bit of work still left to be done there. I should mention, we are coming into our last month of winter now, so that's why this tree is this color. So these are a deciduous conifer tree. In this country, well, at least in my area anyway, different areas might have different results, but where I live, more of a coastal area, these swamp cypress don't tend to drop their foliage too often. I have had it happen, had a complete shed, but it's very rare here. So this is more than likely what most people will get in a more tropical, subtropical, you know, coastal area like I live in. So essentially we've got the changing of the color, but not really much of a drop. We do have, you can see, you know, like these branches up in here, they're bare all the way till the tip, so they did have foliage all along them. So we have had, you know, a bit of foliage drop off. Branch along the back here has actually had all the foliage come off it. This has had most of the foliage come off it. As you can see here, this branch has got a lot of the foliage off it. So, you know, about a 50-50 result there with how this tree goes dormant. So, what are we going to do with this tree moving forward now? And I should mention also that most of the point of making this video is just to give you guys an idea of how I work and how I build a tree out. You've been able to see, you know, this tree for most of its journey so far, so just showing you the next steps. So I do have some wire on these branches that I want to get off before springtime hits because this tree is going to go nuts in spring. I don't want that wire on there because the tree is going to swell. Wire bite on this tree though is not something that actually bothers me. So on this branch back here, I've actually got some quite significant wire bite on there, but it doesn't bother me because this tree is something that barks up quite well. It thickens really quickly, so it thickens and swells. That wire bite, you won't see that in another year or so. It'll be completely gone, out of the picture. So wire bite doesn't really bother me, but if I can avoid it, I will, you know, take this wire off to avoid that swelling that we're going to have in spring. So once the heat comes back, this tree is going to absolutely take off. We're going to have swelling and the wire will bite in. The next thing I want to do as well is take the wire off the roots down here that we placed. Sorry about that. There's a couple of these roots that actually didn't make it, which is fine. So we can just remove those ones. So like this one at the front here. Now I do understand why this root didn't make it. It's because we have a shallow pot here and the tree was sitting up, you know, a fair way in the pot just to get the angle and the base that we wanted, because I did want to show some of these surface roots down here. So this root wasn't actually long enough to get right down into the soil mass, sorry. So it was kind of hanging out around the top of the soil surface, and there was a 50-50 chance that it was going to make it with that higher amount of oxygen that's available at the top of the root system, at the top of the soil system. So it's no surprise really that that one didn't make it, but it was worth a try. So we can remove that anyway, it doesn't matter. This one at the front here is good, this one here is good. All these ones around here are good. That's good, that's good. You can feel how solid they are. There's one here that actually snapped halfway up here, so we can get rid of this one. And then there's another one here that actually broke away as well, so we can get rid of that. But That's only a couple of roots, doesn't really matter, we can get rid of them. The other thing that we need to do as well is start putting the work into place to heal this wound where we cut the main trunk off the tree. So we need to cut that back until we get back to some live tissue, get that covered up with some putty, and that will be good to go. So what else do we need to do to this tree? Besides that, there are a few areas that need pruning on the tree just to reduce where there's been some whorl growth, but at the moment it's not super important. So the things I just want to do to this is go through, get the wire off, get that wound healed up and get those roots removed. So I'll go through and take that wire off now, get those roots removed, and then we'll actually come back and discuss the wound a little bit more, do some work on that. So stick around. Alright, so now I've got you nice and close. So here you can see the wound from the main trunk that was on the tree when we chopped it. So we chopped it here, okay, and then started from the new shoot that was from behind it. So what we need to do now is actually come back in. You can see where it actually started to roll over and heal when we first did it. But at the time, this wasn't really, number one on the agenda to fix or a job to do on this tree. But now that we're getting closer towards this tree being a finished tree, there is still a lot of work to do on it. But as we're, moving closer towards that, I'm going to need to get this wound closed up, barked over, before it can be shown. Otherwise, it's going to have this big opening always on here. Now, if I was just to leave this now, that wouldn't shut any further. You can see that it's fully barked over on the wound here. Okay, so that's not going to keep rolling in. So what we've got to do is re-wound this now so that it'll keep moving over. And this time what I'll do is when I wound it, I'll actually come through and I'll put some of my cut putty on it, okay? And that's going to actually accelerate the healing, and we should be able to get this done within a year, maybe 2 years. So if we start this now, by the time this tree's ready to show in about 2 years from now, hopefully this will be closed up. So one thing that I did do is I had this as a flat cut, obviously when I first did it, when I cut it off with the saw. So I have come through and I've already shaped this with my knob cutter, so this is not flat, it's actually rounded, as you can see. So it's got a bit of a bit more of a natural shape to it. So this should be good for now. If we can just get this to heal over, then we should be in good shape. So what I've got here is my grafting knife. Now you can use like a box cutter or something like that, but I do recommend getting a grafting knife like this. These are insanely sharp, so be careful when using these. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come through, and always make sure you cut away from yourself, but we're going to just start opening this back up. And you can see here that we do have some pithy material, but what we want to get back to is some live tissue, okay? Which we're starting to hit now. So, actually this is a great angle for you to see this. So, see this outer edge here? This is not what we want to see. We want to get back to this here, okay? This stuff on the inside. This is our live tissue. So we want to keep cutting until we get back to that, because that's what's going to start it to heal back over. Now I don't have to come too far back out here. As long as we've exposed this, then that will start to heal and roll over. So out here, this doesn't matter. We don't have to like come all the way back out here or anything. Just as long as we start getting this live material on the inside exposed again, then we'll be in good shape. And obviously, the cleaner you can make these cuts, this is why I recommend getting a grafting knife. The cleaner you can make these cuts, the quicker they're going to heal. So if I was doing this with, you know, a really old blunt tool or whatever, you know, we might get the cuts made and we might get back to the live tissue, but the thing is, the rougher that we do it, the longer it's going to take for that wound to actually start healing over, where these are very razor sharp, clean, precise cuts, and this will start to heal nice and quickly. So we're going to start coming up this bottom side here. We're actually having to go a little bit deeper here to get to that live tissue, which we've reached just there. Rotate that just a little bit. So you can see that we're starting to get a nice live run of tissue around this wound. This side is going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, because I don't actually know. Oh, it's not as deep as I thought it was going to be. I thought this side was going to be a little bit deeper where the live tissue was. It actually seems to be quite close. I'm just trying not to block your view with that branch there. But it's also quite awkward to try and do this and get it on video at the same time. And try not to cut your fingers off. Although I reckon a lost finger would get quite a few more views, but it would make future work a little bit more difficult as well. Alright, so we've got a nice level of wounding around there now, okay? So we've exposed our live tissue again, so this will kick off the healing process. So what I'm going to do is now put some cut putty over the top of this. Let me get my putty out of here. So I won't need all of that, but, well, actually, I might do. It's a pretty big wound. Now, when you're using this stuff, you actually have to lick both of your thumbs. Otherwise, this is going to really stick to your thumbs and it's going to be hard to work. But if you lick your thumbs and put a bit of moisture on there, then it should make your life a little bit easier. But I'm just trying to stretch this out beforehand and just get it to roughly the size and shape of the wound, and make sure that there's enough thickness that water is not going to penetrate and it's going to get a good seal. Alright, so I'm going to put this on here, and then what I want to do now is I just want to start coming in and working the edges down and creating a good seal around the wound. And sealing that down like so. Alright, then we want to push the middle bits down on top of the wound. And make sure that on the top of this here that there's no cracks or areas where water is going to leak into there and cause rotting. So this is one of the purposes of having the putty on here, is if we can keep that fresh tissue that we've just opened up around there, if we can keep that out of the excessive water from when we're watering the tree or from when it rains, we're going to get a lot quicker of healing. Also, the putty that I'm using, it actually does have an accelerator in it, okay? So when you put this on a wound, it actually will accelerate the healing of the wound. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do to really help this along is what will happen in spring. Now that I've got this wound here, we're going to get tons of buds around this area. And I'm actually going to let some of the buds around the top of the wound here, on the top side, I'm actually going to let them grow a little bit. What they will do is actually bring up some of the energy up through this wound and around it, and cause it to heal a little bit quicker. So having those shoots there will definitely help. But I just wanted to show you how to, re-wound this. You can do this with your trees if you've got an old wound that's, already rolled over but hasn't finished healing and gone the whole way. You can actually finish it up like this. So it doesn't matter whether it's like a year or 2 years. You just take it back until you find that live tissue, cover it up with some of this putty, and then you should be good to go. Alright, so I hope you've enjoyed seeing an update on this swamp cypress or bald cypress. Taken all the wire off the tree, off the roots, removed some of the roots down the bottom, and fixed up some of that wound that we have on the back here. There was one little piece of wire that I left on the back just because one of those branches still needs that wire on it. But for the most part, most of the wire was removed. So thanks for watching the video. I will put links down in the description below to some of the tools that I used in today's video. You can visit our web store and pick up some of those high quality Japanese tools so you can do your own work. And I will also leave a link down in the description below to our online courses over at thebonsaidojo.com. So you can go over there, check them out, super cheap, super informative, and a great thing just to have in your toolkit is knowledge. So definitely jump over there and check that out. But until next time, enjoy your bonsai journey.